The first wave of Dungeons and Dragons spoiler cards have been released, and I have to say, this set has the potential to be the best Magic set that we have seen in years.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. Welcome to the weekend. We are here for the joyous experience of talking about some brand new Magic cards with another layer of awesomeness put on top of it, because we're dealing with Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering coming together at last in the actual Magic the Gathering card world instead of Dungeons and Dragons supplements that feature Magic the Gathering. So I have like the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. I have some of that stuff, including the awesome like Guild dice set as well. And I thought that stuff was neat. But honestly, having Dungeons and Dragons come to Magic the Gathering is so much more awesome than I ever thought it could be. With just the handful of cards that we've had spoiled, I have become super hyped about this set. I've always been a big Dungeons and Dragons fan, right? Like I played a ton of Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, mainly second edition. So bear in mind that everything I'm going to talk about in reference to Dungeons and Dragons is going to be leaning heavily on my knowledge of second edition. So if you're playing 5th edition, 4th edition, whatever rule set you're used to, if something sounds weird, it's because we're playing from different time frames. I am from the land of Thaco, the most confusing way of determining how to hit somebody in the game. Anyways, let us go ahead and start by talking about the first card we have on the screen, which is Portable Hole. So this is a 1 white casting cost artifact that honestly is going to feel very much like an enchantment. So when it comes into play, when Portable Hole enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until Portable Hole leaves the battlefield. The flavor text says, they fall for it every time. Now, what's going on here is you can see this adventurer has laid down a portable hole and a beast, maybe some kind of orc or something, has fallen into it, because you can see there's this arm, like this claw reaching out, and they're actually being sucked down into this hole. So what is a portable hole? If you're not aware, a portable hole is just a little circle of cloth, but it's been magically enchanted to function as an interdimensional space that's like about 10 feet deep, right? So essentially, it literally is what it says. It's a portable hole. Now, you can use this to trick people like Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote style. You know what I mean? You ever see like a cartoon where they paint something on, like paint like a cave entrance or something like that onto a wall and enter it? A portable hole is very similar to that. You can literally store items in it if you want, including living beings. Now, this version of Portable Hole seems a little less vicious than the version of Portable Hole that I'm used to, because if you trap the living being in the portable hole that I'm used to, here's how it goes. You put the portable hole down, the enemy falls into the portable hole, and then you just fold it back up, doop, 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 and take that, just like folding up a handkerchief, and you put it in your pocket. Well, as soon as you close off the top of that portable hole, there's no more oxygen flowing into that hole anymore. So anything that needs air to breathe wouldn't actually survive inside the portable hole. Now, clearly, this version of the portable hole allows for things to survive. So I like this. The flavor of this makes perfect sense in terms of when the portable hole shows up, you get to go, okay, that's removed. Like whatever it is. You grab something your opponent has. That's a nice sword you have there. Take it, throw it in the hole. Grab one of their guys into the hole, or just throw throw the hole like a frisbee. It lands on the ground. Boom, they run into it. You close the hole back up. Tuck it into your pocket, and unless they do something about that tucked up portable hole, they're never getting what's in that hole back. And it makes sense, as like white normally has this style of ability with cards like Banishing Light and everything. So the flavor on this card is pretty much perfect. It's exactly what it should be, and it very much evokes exactly what the portable hole is. So dude, I have to say, this is the kind of home run stuff that gets me super excited about the Dungeons and Dragons set. Let's move on and talk about the next card we have here. Now, this is a big one. When I saw this at first, I was like, oh, so cool. Power Word Kill. Man, what a cool concept. So, 1 black and 1. It's an instant. Destroy target non-angel, non-demon, non-devil, non-dragon creature. The flavor text says, Aramil issued a long, heroic challenge. Then the Lich felled him with a single word. That's pretty intense, man. And you can see the artwork shows the Lich close up where he's going, right? And then this being is just, this poor elf guy is arched back in this, his body is just in this crazy rictus where the sound of the word hit him and instantaneously ended his life. You can see his sword flew out of his hand and is janked down into the ground over there. So power word kill is a really funky concept. In Dungeons and Dragons, how it works is there are 3 different power words, unless they've added more. There's power word stun, power word blind, and power word kill. And that's in increasing levels of power. Obviously, blinding somebody permanently is way more intense than stunning them, and ending their life is way more intense than blinding them. So as you progress in power as a wizard in Dungeons and Dragons, you gain access to these power word spells. Now they're interesting for another reason. The cool thing about the power word spells is that they literally only require you to speak. There are a number of different requirements to cast magic in Dungeons and Dragons. You can have verbal components, which is speaking, making sounds. You can have somatic components, which is the arcane gestures. Oh, and then you have actual spell components, like here's a pinch of bat dung and the feather of a phoenix and the tooth of a dragon. Kablow! And you cast a big crazy spell, right? But the power word spells, all they require is 1 word. So once you've memorized the spell and you have it prepared and ready to go, all you have to do is utter a single word and you're able to enact the spell. And that's really powerful because it means if as a wizard you're tied up, let's say your hands are bound or you've lost your spell components in a river or something, whatever it is, you always, as long as you can speak, you're not defenseless. And it honestly also just has that like really epic flavor where you can just point at somebody, die. And they do, like, man, that's epic. And you know what's even cooler than this? Guys, this is a high level wizard spell in Dungeons and Dragons, right? But here's the thing. You and I, we're planeswalkers, right? So we harness magic far more readily than earthly style mages. So while they may study years and years to learn a spell like this, to us, it's just an uncommon variant of creature destruction. You know what I mean? It's like power word kill. I can do that like nobody's business. Like it doesn't mean anything. So this also helps to illustrate the power level of a planeswalker compared to an everyday wizard in Dungeons and Dragons. Even the most powerful wizards and their most powerful spells are almost nothing to us, right? I love it. It's awesome. So the idea behind power word kill is there's a limit to the strength of the creature that you can kill with it. So I believe that's what the flavor is going for, where they're going, angels, demons, devils, and dragons are too powerful to destroy with a single word, but anything else is fair game. So for me, this is a pretty good rendition of power word kill. I have to say, I really dig it. Let's move on. We've got Prosperous Innkeeper. Prosperous Innkeeper is 1 green and 1 for a 1/1 halfling citizen. So we have halflings, and you know, that feels good. So when Prosperous Innkeeper enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. That makes sense. Business is going well. He's got treasure. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So basically, you benefit from more people showing up, just like the Innkeeper would. A lot of Dungeons and Dragons adventures start in inns. I mean, it is a little bit of a hackneyed trope, but regardless, a lot of adventures start in inns, and even if they don't, you'll spend a lot of time in inns. They're great places to gather information, to relax after a mission, to meet with different NPCs, whatever it is. Inns feature readily, and the artwork is pretty straightforward. You can see your little halfling innkeeper who's got the fat little belly of success. He's had a great number of meals, and you've got a cozy vibe, right? The window behind him looks like it's warm and inviting. The front door looks even more warm and inviting. You can see that the fireplace is visible from there. So there's going to be this comforting light and warmth emanating out of the inn as he welcomes whoever this individual is. And obviously this individual is a regular-sized being. So this totally fits into the Dungeons and Dragons flavor as well quite nicely. Let us move on. Then we've got, now this is amazing. We have a dragon god. This is Tiamat. So Tiamat is 1 green, 1 red, 1 black, 1 blue, 1 white, and 2 for a 7/7 legendary dragon god. And Tiamat has flying. When she enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tiamat that each have different names, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. The flavor text says, "My children will rule over all." So this is the evil dragon god. She is the god over all evil dragons. She has 5 different dragon heads, right? And the colors of those different dragon heads represent the different breath weapons and qualities that she has. So you can see there's a red dragon, there's a blue dragon, there's a green dragon, and most likely white and black as well. She is kind of shown in this crazy fog of war vibe where she is just wreaking havoc, just breathing out and bellowing. There's fire all around her. The skies are just filled with sooty kind of clouds, and you can see these wizards with their arms upraised in worship. So these would be evil wizards that worship Tiamat as well, although Tiamat admittedly doesn't really care about humans. Tiamat is all about evil dragons ruling over the earth, or not the earth obviously, but you know what I mean, over the lands, right? So this is a pretty good execution overall. It feels gigantic and beastly. When it shows up, you literally go get 5 dragons and put them in your hands. So she is the herald of the end times. She shows up and boom, 5 more dragons are coming after this dragon god, which is massively intense and a really cool concept. So we actually get 2 different variants of this card, so we can take a look at the other artwork as well. Now with this one, you can clearly see that indeed you do have a black, a white, a red, a green, and a blue head. And interestingly enough, those correspond perfectly with the colors of Magic the Gathering as well. So how neat is that? A nice little dovetail between Tiamat and the actual 5 colors of Magic. I have to say, I actually like the previous artwork that we looked at better. It makes Tiamat feel more nefarious and imposing with the little wizards down there for scale and the shadowy nature of where she's located. Now, obviously, this is very good artwork. Don't get me wrong. The dragon heads look fantastic. But for me, the previous artwork is the one that I like better. Let us move on to whatever the next joyous thing we have to talk about. Oh, it's the lands now. So, we have a cycle. These are the basic lands for the Dungeons & Dragons set. A little bit of a divergence from what we normally see. As you'll notice, the mana symbol is in the background, and overlaid we have flavor text. And this is a good vibe for Dungeons & Dragons. So, the plane says, "Venturing beneath the desert sands, you've discovered an alien power pulsing with inconceivable energy." Now, I will admit, I'm not familiar with what's being depicted here in terms of Dungeons & Dragons. There are a lot of things in Dungeons & Dragons, and I only know some of them, because admittedly, I played heavily a long, long time ago. And so certain things have been lost by my brain to the mists of time, and other things were simply invented after I stopped playing, really. You know what I mean? I don't know about you guys, but for me, Dungeons & Dragons became far more difficult to play when I became an adult with adult responsibilities. It was way easier when we were teenagers in high school and our parents had to take care of all of our problems, and we could just be like, yep, we can sit down and play this game for 8 hours with no problem. Now scheduling is a nightmare. But anyways, the flavor text on these lands helps to illustrate what's going on in a very Dungeons & Dragons way, talking about either where you are or what your actions have done. So the next card here is the island, and it says, "Alarmed by the news you've brought, the storm giant king of the Maelstrom has called his kin to council." So essentially, this is some quest that you've gone on. You've met up with the king of the storm giants, relayed news to him. It's freaked him out, and he's calling all of his family to a council to figure out what to do. And you can see in the artwork, there is this massive, massive maelstrom of water that is flowing up there. And it's crazy to think that these storm giants just reside in a massive storm. So I like the idea of this flavor text land concept. I don't think I would want to see it on every set, but to set the tone for Dungeons & Dragons, it really does work for me. Then we've got the swamp. This one's super exciting. The flavor text says, "You expected to meet hostile drow in this ancient ruin, but they fled long ago. what darkness could have driven them out? The Drow live in the Underdark, right? And the Drow are like the super evil elves. They're very vicious and greedy, and they interfight and everything. And remember, again, I'm old school. We're talking like 2nd edition era. So if things have changed, I have no idea. But back in the day, the Drow were like a mega enemy, and they resided deep in the Underdark, where there was this crazy magical radiation, which actually gave them crazy strong magical powers. They worship like a spider queen god Loth, right? They're super intense, but they live in the Underdark, and this radiation is what gives them all these magic powers. But conversely, if they're away from this radiation, up in like the surface or whatever, in the sunlight, like they're weak to sunlight, they can't really, like, they gotta wander around like this, like it causes them pain and stuff. And slowly but surely their powers erode away if they're away from the Underdark. But the Underdark is a place full of politics and intrigue, and it's just a really, really awful place to live with crazy, powerful beings. So we're seeing here what is presumably some ruins. Some ruins of where the Drow were. Like, these adventurers went seeking the Drow, and instead they found the empty ruins of these, essentially the rulers of the Underdark, right? Like, the Drow were the big boys down in the Underdark. So what is it that did this? What laid waste to their lands and caused them to flee? What insane power made that happen? It certainly does fire up the imagination, and I'm curious to see if we're going to have Drow as dark elves in this set, because that would be very cool. Maybe we'll even get to see the biggest, baddest Drow, Drizzt, you know what I'm talking about? Double sworded. He's got the little statue that summons up his panther. Oh, so cool, so cool. Anyways, let's move on. Then we've got the mountain. So the mountain is saying, as you make camp near the ancient ruin, you hear the sound of drums echoing in halls where no dwarf has lived in generations. Honestly, this totally feels like something out of Dungeons & Dragons. You're heading into this mountainous area known to house a certain dwarf clan in ancient times, but now it's been long abandoned. So, in seek of treasure and adventure, you head off to these ancient ruins where no one lives, and you set up camp. You find the ruins, and you're looking, and you're like, okay, night is about to fall. Let's set up camp. Tomorrow we'll tackle the ruins. And as you start to set up camp, the dungeon master reads this to you and says, as you make camp near the ancient ruin, you hear the sound of drums echoing in halls where no dwarf has lived in generations. And so now you're going to, what are you going to do? Are you going to settle down for the night? You know that there's something in the ruins. Can you sleep comfortably? Better set a watch. There's no safety here. And what kind of greeting are you going to get the next day when you go into the ruins? Is it going to be friends or foe, right? Are you going to find ancient dwarves you didn't know were still alive? Are you going to find something that drove the dwarves away and has dwelt there ever since? Or are you just going to find some beast that's decided to make this place its home? Who knows, right? It could be infested with a massive goblin horde. Who knows? The artwork is pretty funky. I mean, it shows mountains with dwarven ruins hidden in there. Not like super hidden, but you know what I mean, tucked away. Looking pretty good overall. And then the next thing we have is the forest. This one's really cool. The flavor text says, before the Elf Queen will aid you, you must find a way to cure the strange rot afflicting the roots of the ancient trees. So you can see in the artwork, you have these trees that are tended by the elves to create this like living in harmony with nature but structured nature vibe. Like sometimes you'll find elves that have more of a wild setup and they live in the trees as is. But this has a more manicured flow to it where it feels like the elves have coaxed the trees to grow in these smooth kind of cone patterns so that they can build these wending pathways around them. And you can see the scale of this as well. When you take a look at the two people that are situated on the one side, right? On the right-hand side of the artwork, you can see there are two individuals, and it gives you a great idea of how big this is. So you find this ancient, beautiful elven city that's existed for thousands of years, right? And they're living in harmony with nature, and everything feels so right. But underneath, there's this worried aspect in like the elders' eyes, and everybody seems peaceful, but the people who are in charge, there's a little bit of nervousness and anxiety that you can pick up undertones of. And then they usher you in and they're like, okay, you know what, we will give you our help, but to do so, you have to help us first. Our city is dying. The great trees that we rely on, there's a mysterious rot that is rotting them away, and we don't know what it is. And we haven't told anybody because we don't want to spread panic amongst our kind. But we need you to figure out the cause of this problem so that we can stop it, so we can cure our trees. And once you do that, we will aid you in your quest. And dude, that totally feels like amazing Dungeons and Dragons style vibe, does it not? I love this so much. Speaking of loving things, let's take a look at the next card. Oh man, they put Vorpal Sword into the magic set. It's so cool. Vorpal Swords are insane. Oh my god. A Vorpal Sword is a heavily enchanted magic blade. And back in 2nd edition days, Vorpal Blades were essentially, like Vorpal weapons, were designed to hew people's limbs and specifically heads off. So they're magically enchanted to just knock people's heads off like it's nobody's business. They're amazing. Basically, if you get a critical hit, it automatically decapitates your opponent, right? It's crazy times. It can also be used to hack off limbs, but it's the decapitation that really is the main flavor and epicness of the Vorpal Sword. So, Vorpal Sword is a 1 black casting cost artifact equipment. Makes sense. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has death touch, and it equips for 2 black. So this is obviously only going to be used in not mono black, in black dedicated decks, especially because the activated ability is hefty. It's 3 black and 5. Until the end of turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. This Vorpal Sword is so powerful that if you infuse enough mana into it, if you infuse enough mana into the Vorpal Sword, it becomes so sharp that it can decapitate a planeswalker. Not a mage, not a dragon, a literal planeswalker. Beings that are stronger than gods, right? Like, we literally summon gods to our bidding as planeswalkers. This is a Vorpal Sword where a planeswalker's figured out a way to infuse it with so much black mana, so much power, that you can literally behead a planeswalker with it. And anyone can. It doesn't matter how. You could take the weakest little 0/1 creature and go, take this Vorpal Sword, jam enough mana into it, and it can just decapitate a planeswalker. Say goodbye to your head, Nicol Bolas. Say goodbye to your head, Jace. Say goodbye to your head. You or me? Like, dude, that is incredible flavor, right? Like, it's amazing. And look at the artwork. You can see a decapitated Gorgon, right? The Vorpal Blade has that magical energy glowing along the edge of it, the super sharp side that just went whoop off with your head, right? And I like the fact that you don't see the face of the person who is wielding the blade, right? They're like a faceless killer, almost like they don't matter. And the focus is purely on the Vorpal Blade and the victim of the Vorpal Blade. Like, how awesome is this? This is such an amazing concept. And we actually have another variation of it as well. Now, this one, admittedly, when you look at the artwork, you might like it more. I mean, it's a completely different vibe, right? This is us looking up at a wielder of a Vorpal Sword that's covered in this blood red energy, which is pretty intense. But I have to admit that it just doesn't it doesn't evoke the same level of insane power that the normal Vorpal Sword does. This is the Buy a Box promo version, by the way, in case you weren't aware. But when I look at it, I mean, like, seriously, look at this and then look at this. There's no competition. The difference between the two is immense in terms of the flavor it evokes. This Vorpal Sword has much more of almost like a hopeful and heroic vibe, which doesn't feel right for the Vorpal Sword. Do you know what I mean? Like, this doesn't have the same kind of dark, menacing flow and feel to it that the other Vorpal Blade does. This honestly feels more like, this feels like the artwork you would see on like a white card, maybe like Avenging Knight or something like that. It's got, I don't know, there's just like, there's more dignity to it and there's less threat to it. That's how it makes me feel overall. But ultimately, I have to say, I absolutely love how much flavor is dripping from these cards. They have genuinely managed to evoke the Dungeons and Dragons experience on a very visceral level. And I went from being like, I'm curious about the Dungeons and Dragons set, to being, I am ravenous to know more. I know we're going to do the Modern Horizons spoiler season before we get to enjoy the Dungeons and Dragons spoiler season in full, but I can't wait to see what else is coming so we can dive in and have a good time talking about it. So, thanks for coming by, my friends. List of my top patrons scrolling on by. And other than that, if you want to hang out with me some more, I'm doing an old school Magic Chandelar stream run over on my Hatcher channel. I'll leave a link right here at the end of the video. Thanks for coming by, my friends. See you next time.